So first of all, thank you very much for having me, and I hope the workshop's been great so far. Obviously I'm flying blind, so if you want to like steer the conversation at the end in any which direction, which routes you in the conversations you've already been having, then please do. I'm going to take you through some slides that very quickly kind of take you through our perspective, or I guess our methodology around exploring the natural world and using different techniques to kind of bring that to the forefront of how we both make and present work. So first of all, as you've seen in my bio, but also just you've read maybe there very quickly on that slide, we're a studio that's based across the UK. We work across the world. This kind of just briefly tells you what we do in a very practical, producery way. We create and produce work. We do a lot of research and development. We license and tour our work around the world. And now we're kind of beginning to explore our role in Web3 and why we would start to kind of use various different new, more open technologies to do what we do. So we're known as a studio for making lots of different types of experiential work. We use technology at the heart of a lot of what we do, but often we're trying to make that technology disappear, either through the images that we show you, the moving images, or through the kind of installation art that in the way that we present work. So this is a piece called In the Eyes of the Animal. It was initially presented as part of a really amazing festival in the northwest of England called Abandoned Normal Devices, and it explores the world very simply from the perspective of 4 different animals. What we're doing here is is the very first kind of use of LiDAR scanners. So we're taking scans of the forest, and you were sat right in the same place that we scanned. So you then saw that exact landscape from different perspectives. The work, of course, it's traveled the world now, and I think it's as strong no matter where you're seated. But the best thing about when we first launched it was, of course, you were there, you could smell it, you could feel it, you could kind of really, you genuinely got the kind of sensory perspective in many different ways. Sorry if I'm going to go super fast, but it's just so I can get through all my slides. It genuinely is lightning. So this is moving forward a few years. We made a piece of work called We Live in an Ocean of Air. We Live in an Ocean of Air is about the human's relationship to the natural world. So this is about it's about breath. It's about where does the human breath end, and where does the tree's breath begin. So we're taking very high detailed scans and exploring the kind of cycle of the cycle of water and breath through the roots of the trees and right up into the air. The blue that you can see in these images floating around represents the breath and the oxygen, sorry. So this is just to kind of illustrate how you might kind of understand the kind of raw, real kind of physical asset or landscape, and how it translates to the virtual world. So you've got this kind of almost one-to-one scale, and really what we're trying to do is represent not just the kind of beauty and the awe and the wonder of these incredible organisms, you know, especially when we're looking at trees here, but also that scale. It's like, how can we create these kind of epic pieces of work that you can shrink the human down to a micro scale to explore the kind of inner workings in detail of these incredible things. So just to kind of touch on the technical, for those who are interested, on the left you have a Faro LiDAR scanner, and on the right you have a kind of what that volumetric data looks like once it's been captured. And you know, you've got loads of really great studios doing work like this. You've got ScanLab, who I know have just done a really wonderful piece, and they're much more versed with this technology than we are, but this is often the kind of base level of how we would get our initial data. And there's something about, you know, starting with a kind of real, we often would start a piece of work where you're looking at something very understandable, very real, and then we're taking you inside, going beyond, seeing underneath. This is a bit of a rubbish slide, but it kind of gives you a sense of what it looks like as you peel back the layers. So, you know, on the bottom right, we've got the kind of, you know, what it looks like in engine, and then trying to like add on the layers of the flow and with the water cycles top left, and then how that might look under the soil. So you've got this kind of very kind of accurate data from the LiDAR scanner in some places, and then us imagining what that looks like and feels like under the soil as we go beneath. So where are we going now? What's the kind of more recent works? we've started to kind of take that into augmented reality. So this is a project we did with a wonderful visitor experience venue or place called the Eden Project in Cornwall. They have grown a rainforest in one of the world's biggest biomes, and we work with them to start to explore the stories of the happenings or things that happen in that biome that you can't see. It goes beyond what the human senses can do. So this is a flower that only blossoms once every few years. What's going on beneath the soil. We're also exploring kind of what this stuff looks like even bigger and at mass scale, and how to kind of invite audiences to in a kind of more mainstream way to understand, see and kind of understand the way the forest is maybe connected, both to you as a human, but also kind of start to reveal the underneath workings. So this is a piece that we made for the Museum of the Future in Dubai. It also kind of this one big kind of forest projection and simulation leads into a bigger interactive experience, which I haven't got time to talk you through today, but it ultimately starts exploring the role of biodiversity and balance in the ecosystem. So we're trying to use really accessible ways to start talking about how you can't just mess with things like this. This is a game that ultimately you collect various DNA samples, you bring them into DNA, not actual, you bring them into this simulator and you watch to see whether or not your organism that you've created from these samples will survive or not. And the general message being, it probably won't. You can't just kind of take pieces of DNA from random species and put them into a ecosystem and expect them to survive. It's a wonderful thing that we have in the planet. We're also kind of exploring these things in much more analog ways. So how do we take the works that we've got and set them in places where we're just listening or we're just kind of smelling? So this is a piece of work called Observations on Being, where we're starting to take the concept of our connection with the natural world and how important that is, and kind of inviting people to see that from several different angles. So the piece starts with a blind walk, which is designed by a collaborator of ours called Andy Shipley. Then you do some deep listening kind of, we had worked with some fantastic writers to kind of get several perspectives on this, on these themes. And then you kind of MLF's more digital or visual art based work is kind of placed throughout this kind of walk through really wonderful landscapes. And lastly, I'm just going to flick to this slide. This is one of the pieces of work that was cited within Observations on Being. It's called The Tides Within Us, because what we've now started to do with a sort of more recent line of inquiry is say, well, if this is the natural world and this is let's look inside the human and let's find those kind of connections. So using very similar scanning techniques, but more exploring, well, obviously we don't LiDAR scan ourselves, so we wouldn't get that detail. So we're using fMRI scanning, and we have a great partnership with a digital imaging institute in Germany called the Fraunhofer Mavis Institute. And they're specialists in kind of MRI, but also kind of just generating data based on the human body. So we've been working with them. This is actually MRI scans of one of our producers who spent a very, very long time kind of being captured. And we take that data, bring it into our kind of engines, and we start to explore, like, well, where can we see parallels between the visual kind of symbols or systems within the natural world and the human. And hopefully we start to kind of draw comparisons as we present the works together. So that is my very, very, very whistle-stop tour of what we've been doing in relation to, I think, what you've been talking about the last few days. And I'm happy to kind of dig deeper into any of that stuff if it's more helpful to you.